The first reading is from Exodus chapter 17. From the wilderness of Sin, the whole congregation of the Israelites journeyed by stages, as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. The people quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink," Moses said to them. "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord?" But the people thirsted there for water, and the people complained against Moses and said, "Why did you bring us out of Egypt to kill us and our children and livestock with thirst?" So Moses cried out to the Lord, "What shall I do for these people? They are almost ready to stone me." The Lord said to Moses, "Go on ahead of the people and take some of the elders of Israel with you. Take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile and go. I will be standing there in front of you on the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock, and water will come out of it, so that the people may drink." Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. He called the place Massah and Meribah, because the Israelites quarreled and tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" This ends the first reading.
2 weeks ago, we heard how the Spirit led Jesus into the desert, where Jesus had to stay for 40 days, and he was tempted by the devil. Today, our first reading brings us back into the wilderness, and this time it's the people of Israel that had been led out of slavery in Egypt, and now they are in the desert on their way into the promised land. Even if we ourselves have never been in a real desert, we know that deserts are uncomfortable and dangerous. They are risky places and very challenging. It is hot and lonely. There's usually not enough water, and you can get easily lost. They are extreme places. In order to survive, you have to be alert at all times. You have to be open to see, to listen, to respond what is around you. When we look back at our lives, we may realize that not only the Israelites and Jesus were in a desert, in a wilderness, but that we ourselves have been in all kinds of deserts and wildernesses ourselves. Maybe it was a time between jobs when we didn't know what the future will bring. Maybe it was the month between our degree and our first job, when we also didn't know what comes next, when we handed in resume after resume, but nobody seems to need us. Maybe for some of you, Canada felt like a desert when you first arrived here. In a different country, foreign, you didn't speak the language, you had no job, no place to stay. Or of course, it can feel like a desert when we're losing a loved one, when we are just sad and desperate, full of questions and doubts, and we wonder where God is. And we, with the Israelites, we ask, is God among us? The wilderness is a hard and difficult place. For the people of Israel, this long and hard journey was not only necessary to reach the promised land, it was also a spiritual journey, a journey to learn about God and develop a closer relationship with Him. On their way through the desert, they discover and they experience who God is for them. And that took time, and it kept being an ongoing process. It's not that God revealed Himself once, they believed, and from then on, their faith was an unshakable trust that carried them all the way. We know from our own experience that faith often wavers. Trusting God needs to grow and to develop, and it changes many times. Having faith includes times of doubt and times when we have more questions than answers, sometimes even more anger at God than love for Him. It can be a bit like our human relationships. We meet, over time we get to know each other, we become friends, and on the way we discover new traits in our friends, positive ones and sometimes disappointing ones. And we work together to deepen the relationship. And the same is true for our faith, for our relationship with God. We need to take time for reflection, to find out what is important for our faith, how we can nurture it, and how we keep it in the journeys through the desert. Faith is nothing we own, but we keep striving after it. Also, the Apostle Paul said, "Not that I have already obtained all this, or have already arrived at my goal, but I press on to take hold of that for which Jesus Christ took hold of me." All this was part of the desert journey the Israelites made. They had no choice, as we often are just forced to simply keep walking. When life is reduced to the basics, we may think and feel and reflect differently. We are less distracted, we are focused. And that's why Lent can be an important time for us. When we choose to enter a desert-like place and try to focus on our spiritual life, when we focus on our relationship with God. The Israelites were on their way of finding out who was God for them in this new situation, no longer slaves in Egypt, but free and on their way to the promised land. Today, we hear that they ran out of water, and when we remember the pictures of countries with droughts, we realize to run out of water in the desert is not an inconvenience, but it's life-threatening. So no wonder the Israelites start to panic and begin to ask, is God really still with us? It's understandable. They are in immediate danger. Yes, not that long ago, they thought they were starving, but God had provided for them and sent them the manna. God showed that He's not leaving them alone, that He cares. But in this time of desperation, they forgot. They needed more assurance. And so they ask again, God, are you still taking care of us? A question we know. Is God really there with us when terrible things happen? When life seems hardly bearable? When we are overcome with sorrow, sadness, and fear? Today we hear, God is in the desert. God helps. God gives what we need. The water in the desert is God's answer to our question. Yes, I am with you, and yes, I will provide. The water told the Israelites back then and us today, whatever God promised, He will keep. And as God heard their cries while they were slaves in Egypt and came to help, He again heard their cries in the wilderness and gave them what they needed. And that hasn't changed until today. God hears our cries, and He will provide for us. God cares deeply about each one of us. God helps us move from places of fear and doubt to places of trust. God provides for us and reveals Himself to us, and then He asks us to trust, especially in the moments when God's care doesn't come as quickly as we hoped or not in the way we had expected. In those moments, hopefully we can look back and remember the provision of God in our past journeys, how we found our ways out of the deserts we have already wandered through, and that we trust that it will be like that in the future again. During these weeks of Lent, we remember how God revealed himself in Jesus Christ, and that in his life, death, and resurrection, God showed us his love. Sometimes all we can do in the midst of the darkness of a sometimes appalling and cruel world is clinging for dear life to a sometimes hidden God. Is God among us? The Israelites and people over the centuries, including us, asked that question, and the answer is, yes, God is among us. God saves his people, and he keeps giving us the water of life. Amen.